Welcome to Dave's Take. Today we are talking about Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, the fifth installment in the franchise, and the first installment not directed by Steven Spielberg. Archaeologist Indiana Jones races against time to retrieve a legendary artifact that can change the course of history. When you think of an action-adventure film, most people think of Indiana Jones because those films are some of the best action-adventure films of all time. I'm a huge fan of the franchise. I mean, I'm wearing the shirt right now. I was extremely excited for Dial of Destiny. I think Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade are some of my favorite movies of all time. I really love Temple of Doom, and Kingdom of the Crystal Skull it's okay. I will say, when I saw it when I was like 12 years old for the first time, I thought it was great, but as the years go on, I can see why people don't really like that film. But things are different this time around because Steven Spielberg is not directing this film. Yes, the legendary filmmaker is not directing the fifth installment of his own franchise. So we have James Mangold directing this film, and he's a great director. He's directed Logan, Ford vs. Ferrari. I mean, he has a great filmography, so I felt like we were in good hands. And Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is interesting. It's interesting in some good ways, but a lot of bad ways. And overall, I was pretty disappointed with the film. But I'll first talk about the things I liked. I love John Williams' score. I mean, I have to talk about that. I'm glad that John Williams came back for this fifth film because his score is everything in these Indiana Jones movies. I mean, when the action's really picking up and the score starts picking up, you need his music there to really make it feel like an Indiana Jones movie and really elevate those sequences. And when the theme kicks in, I mean, it never gets old. So I'm glad that John Williams decided to come back for the fifth and final film because the score is really needed here. And I thought most of the performances were great. I mean, it's always great to see Harrison Ford back as this character. It's the character he loves to play. He hates playing Han Solo. He loves playing Indiana Jones. But there are things that happen in this movie that I feel like really bring a deeper side of Indiana Jones that I actually really appreciated. There are some things that he's going through, and I thought Harrison Ford did a great job with those specific scenes. And Phoebe Waller-Bridge plays his goddaughter, and I thought she was a blast. She has a history too, but she's also very witty. I thought the chemistry between her and Harrison Ford was great. Their banter back and forth. I mean, they're the reason why the movie works sometimes. And of course, I love me some Mads Mikkelsen. I mean, I feel like he was born to play an Indiana Jones villain, and his villain here isn't anything different or revolutionary by any means, but him on screen and him playing this villain, I thought it was a lot of fun. And there's some moments sprinkled out through the film that remind us why we love this franchise, why we love going on these adventures, and I think some of that stuff works. And overall, it's a competent film. But unfortunately, my issues outweigh the things I liked about the film. And ironically, a lot of my issues were the same issues with Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. The first one I'll talk about is Harrison Ford. He's obviously a legend. He is Indiana Jones. He is one of my favorite actors of all time. And I really think in those moments, those one-on-one moments that really dive deep into his character, he does a fantastic job. But in Indiana Jones, there are action sequences. That's no spoiler. And I think that in the moments where Indiana Jones is in the center of those action sequences, they try to have Harrison Ford be in the center of those action sequences as well. And sometimes it comes off as a little awkward because he is 80 years old. And it is impressive that he's doing all this stuff. It really is mind-blowing that he can move around the way he does at that age and still do these giant blockbusters and do some of the stunts that he has to do in some of these films. But there are times where it does come off a little awkward. And because of that, they have to use a lot of CGI. There is an overabundance of CGI in this film, like in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. There might be more CGI in this film than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And I think that takes away some of the magic of Indiana Jones. Because the first three films, it was a lot of practical effects, a lot of really imaginative action sequences that really stick out, things that are timeless now. In Dial of Destiny, there isn't any action sequence here that is really memorable. There's nothing that's really going to blow you away. The only action sequence I had a blast during was the opening sequence. And ironically, it was a de-aged Harrison Ford, which de-aging here actually looked pretty good. Sometimes a little distracting with the audio, and sometimes looked a little weird, but overall, I was kind of impressed with that. But that opening sequence was a lot of fun, and it was my favorite sequence in the film. But even that sequence was filled with a lot of CGI and didn't feel very imaginative. And that's what the whole film feels like. It doesn't feel like it has some of that imaginative flair that the original three, and even sometimes in the fourth, had. It's definitely missing that Spielberg charm that made these films so great. Dial of Destiny almost feels like a fan film and not really an Indiana Jones film. The overall story and plot really just kind of drags along. It's not as interesting or engaging as the first three films especially, and even to some extent the fourth film. There are things that happen throughout the film. It almost feels like they're like just kind of going through the motions. They got to go get the thing to do this. And that happens in the first three films. Don't get me wrong. But like I said before, I feel like Spielberg had this charm and mastery to those films that kept it going, kept it really fun and interesting. This whole film, Dial of Destiny, sometimes felt like a drag. There are some small moments where I feel like they almost had something there, but it is just overglossed by all the CGI and these really uninteresting action sequences. And there's no spoilers here. I'm not going to spoil anything, but I'm going to touch on the ending, but I'm not even going to mention anything about it. I'm just going to say this. If you thought the ending to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was ridiculous, holy shit, you are in for a treat, because the ending of this film is absolute nonsense. It's crazy. It's insane. And the thing is, like, I get what they're trying to do. And on paper, it sounds like it could work, especially with some aspects with Indy's character. But it is ridiculous. I mean, it makes the ending of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull look pretty tame compared to this. I mean, the last 15 minutes of the movie, I was like, holy shit, what is going on? And who thought that this was a great idea? Now, granted, it's definitely going to stick in my memory. And there are some elements that are definitely fun to it. And there are some elements that made me laugh out loud, and I don't know if that was their intention, but I was like, holy shit, this is absolutely insane. But if we're going to compare it to the first three films, because those are the gold standard, I feel like Indy's always going for some artifact or some object that ends up having some greater power. And it fit well with the narrative in the film and the franchise as a whole. And I will say here, the Dial, there are parts of it that are interesting, but I feel like what ends up happening, I think they went too far. I don't know if I can get behind it. I think they went a little too far there. But like I said before, as a big Indiana Jones fan, I was disappointed in the Dial of Destiny. This felt like a sequel that we definitely didn't really need, because there wasn't anything really new to bring to the table. There are some elements in the film that I think flesh out Indy's character a little bit better. And like I said, there are some moments that remind us why we love the franchise. But overall, the film just feels like a fan film of Indiana Jones. It's definitely missing that Steven Spielberg mastery and charm that made the first three great movies. And like some moments in the fourth, you saw some of that Spielberg magic there. Here, none of it's there. It's a competent film. It's overall an okay time. But if you're a big fan of Indiana Jones, I think you'll have some fun with the film. But for me, unfortunately, this is probably my least favorite film in the franchise. I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny 5 Davey Daves. Like I was saying, it was a competent film. And what I mean by that is there's a plot, they do things, and there's an ending. And I know that doesn't sound like much, but it feels like nowadays a lot of movies get caught up in their own bullshit. They can't really accomplish that. So I'll say that it was a fine, competent movie, which randomly that feels kind of refreshing. But in the end, though, I think you're going to be disappointed with this film. So, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. Let me know what you guys thought of it once you've seen it. I'm curious to hear. And thank you so much for watching. Click here to see more of Dave's Takes.